It's remake versus original time. This time it's actually a remake versus an actual original. Hey there, creepy peeps, and welcome to another horror movie review in our 31 Days of Horror marathon. Today we have another remake versus original. This time we are going to be talking about I Spit on Your Grave, the 1978 version versus 2010 version. The original was directed by, dear God, sorry, Miyazaki. And our remake was directed by, much easier to pronounce, Stephen Monroe. So basically both movies have the same plot. Follows a writer, Jennifer Hill, who rents a cabin out in like some hick town, whatever, you know, some far removed town, cabin out in the middle of nowhere to write. She's a novelist. And she is assaulted by a group of men, raped, beaten, left for dead, or, you know, they think they leave her for dead. And then she comes back and exacts revenge in the most brutal ways. The original has, hold on, let me get this correct. The original has like an alternate title, also known as Day of the Woman. That gives you any hints. Our female lead is going to kick some ass. These movies are very similar to Last House on the Left, which the original preceded the original I Spit on Your Grave by 6 years. Hold on, let me just double check. Yeah, Last House on the Left, Wes Craven's, came out in 1972, so it was a little bit ahead of I Spit on Your Grave, but it's kind of the same concept. Instead of the parents getting revenge, though, it is the victim. So as far as what I liked about each movie, what I really liked about both films is, of course, the fact that a lady is kicking ass, taking names, you know, getting revenge. I feel like horror lends itself to that a lot. Like, there's no shortage of ass-kicking women in horror movies, so that's what's so great about this genre. So these movies are no exception. And I really like that it doesn't, it just shows the story, like both movies, I'm talking about both movies here. Like they just show the story, and they don't even bring up any questions of kind of like repercussions or anything like that, like what happens to Jennifer after the movie ends, because obviously, yes, she's getting revenge, but she does murder people. So, you know, that's still a crime whether she was brutally raped and beaten or not. You know, she would still get she would still get in a lot of trouble for that. But the movie kind of just doesn't worry about any of that. It doesn't worry about any of that. It's just like, here's an awful thing that happened, and here is the victim doing awful things back. I think the remake excels in the gore a little bit more, as far as the revenge goes, when Jennifer goes to get her revenge. Way more gruesome revenge scenes in the original, but I mean the revenge scenes are also pretty damn good in the original. Way more gruesome in the remake. Okay. That being said, the rape scene is also, it was harder for me to watch the one in the remake as opposed to the original. They both take up a lot of time. Like they both, yeah, they don't, kind of like Last House on the Left does. I'm going to compare it a lot. They're very similar. Similar to Last House on the Left, where, you know, where Last House on the Left really doesn't use any cuts in that scene and just force you to watch. I Spit on Your Grave, they more use like the length tactic. Like it takes up a big chunk of the movie when she gets assaulted. So it's like just when you think it's gonna end and we can finally get to the part where she gets revenge, like, you know, she's got more awful things in store for her first. They really bring you to that point where when she starts to get her revenge, you are just as bloodthirsty as she is, just because those scenes take so long, and it's just like, but I think the remake won out a little bit. That one was a little, not even a little, it was much harder for me to watch that. See, what I didn't like about them, there's not much that I didn't like about it. I feel like both movies are actually really relevant now. I feel like if no remake of this had been made in 2010, there definitely would be one in the works right now, I think. Given the climate of the culture right now. So if there had been no remake prior to this, there would definitely be one on the way, if it, you know, if not coming out this year, I think. It's very, very topical for now. Like, I like that I'm doing it right now. Like, there really wasn't anything I didn't like about these two. Like I said, it doesn't bother with anything else. It just shows you this story, so it doesn't bother with, like, because I know sometimes you're left thinking like, well, what happens to her afterward? Like, where does she go? What does she do? Do people find out, like, you know, like, eventually these people are going to find out that these guys are missing and somebody murdered them. What's going to happen? It just doesn't bother with any of that. I think because it doesn't address it at all, I think it makes the movie better. So when it ends, like, you're not, I don't know. I think just the way they didn't handle it was better than if they kind of like brought it up and then left you thinking about it. And then that would kind of make the movie less good, I think, because then it's like, well, then what happens? Like, this doesn't make any sense. She would definitely be thrown in jail for this, blah 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 blah. I think the best thing about these two movies is that they make you feel sympathetic toward main character who makes a lot of awful decisions in the beginning of the movie. That's why I think these movies would be so good if they were coming out now, given, like I said, the climate of the culture. Because this girl makes a lot of bad decisions before the awful events happen to her. So it's kind of like, it doesn't, you know, it kind of brings up the question of like her deserving it or not, which of course, thank you, telephone, which of course, any victim in any sexual assault situation is not at fault for what, you know, what another person does to them. It's not their fault. But it just kind of brings up that question in an interesting way, because like when she gets there, you know, she's like asking for directions and she sees like it's you know, it's obvious that these men are checking her out, and like especially in the remake, like they're kind of gross about it. And she tells them exactly where she's staying. We have the scene with like the mentally challenged character in each one, where which of course he's not, you know, it's a different type of character, but she, you know, she kisses him, and then he goes back and tells all of his buddies like, oh, she kissed me and I could see her, she wasn't wearing a bra and blah 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 blah. And I think the remake addresses this a little more like overtly. Like the guys are taunting her, like, you know, like that she was being a tease and stuff like that, like implying that she is deserving what's happening to her, which of course she doesn't. But, you know, I just think it brings up an interesting point within the movie. So it's definitely like something that like the movie leaves up for discussion, which I think would just be really good nowadays. But anyways, now I have to pick one. If I had to suggest one. Shit. If I had to pick one, if you haven't seen either and you could only watch one, or I could only suggest one to you, I think I would suggest the remake, just because it's a little more shocking. For sure. I think given all the stuff we're exposed to as media consumers now, the original version is just not as shocking because there's much, you know, like the level of gore and violence on like television even is amplified from that. So it's like we're used to a little bit more. Our threshold is a little bit higher. So I think as far as like shock factor and something that might shock you or disgust you or make you feel some type of way is going to be the remake. So if I had to suggest one, it's going to be that one. If you've seen either, let me know in the comment section down below what you thought about them. And if you've seen both, let me know which one you would pick if you had to pick one to suggest to somebody. And until tomorrow, stay strange. Bye. Man, I talked for a long time on these two. I really liked these movies. Like, these are both really good. And this was actually a hard decision to decide which one I liked better. I did like them both for sure. You can subscribe to me and follow me all this month for more movie reviews. I'm pretty sure I got a few more remake versus originals coming up, so subscribe.